Hi, this is Mr. Y. This is a game that was played the week before spring break of 2014 between Julian and Collin at Wednesday Chess. Julian had the white pieces and Collin had the black pieces. We joined the game already in action at move 29. Julian has just captured a rook on c2 with his knight. And so it looks like Julian is up a knight for a pawn. Got a knight here for a pawn. But these two pawns over here are threatening to attack, to move into to Julian's space and to promote to a queen. So this is going to be an exciting ending here. Let's see what happens. We have h5. All right, Collin starts right off with the right move, and we have b4. Oh, that's not the right move. What would be a better move here? Well, what's wrong with b4? Well, b4 allows Collin to stop any threat that Julian has with by bringing the king in front of the two pawns and putting this pawn here. A better move here would have, let's see here, better move would have been knight a3. Here we go, supporting this pawn. Or what else? Knight e3. I guess, yeah, either way. Well, actually, supporting that pawn is really the secondary issue. What we're after here with this knight is to come after this pawn, to open up these lines for your pawns to promote on yourself. And what you want to have is use this knight as a support piece for the pawns promoting. So he moved this pawn forward, and Collin, I don't think, made the right move either. He should have just pushed forward, as I demonstrated. Instead, he took, which allows Julian to take back with the knight. So now he's got a very strong arrangement here with these two pawns and this knight, and white is definitely winning at this point. So Collin continues fighting g5. The move here probably would have been to push this pawn forward, to support this, and to continue pushing the pawns forward, again using the knight as a support piece. Instead, Julian played b6, just pushing the one pawn without support. Now what's interesting is the two squares I've marked with green here are both controlled by white pieces, so the king can't come towards this pawn. So it looks like this pawn is going to do okay. And in fact, this isn't a bad move. I would have gone with a4, but b6 is okay. So Collin goes around those green spots, tries to stop the pawn from advancing, and Julian plays a4. Okay, now he's going to bring up the other pawn to support that pawn, which is good. You want to bring your two pawns next to each other, connected pass pawns. So this is exciting. g4, and then we have what did Julian play? Knight a6, and I didn't like this move at all. Oh my God, this is such a bad move. I'm sorry. So let's see here. What would have been a better move? How about a5? That's what sort of pops to mind for me, is just keep these pawns going forward. You want to use this knight as a support piece behind the pawns, allowing the pawns to dominate this king. At this point, there's really no way to stop the pawns from promoting. The best try might be something like king b7. I don't know, maybe. And then we have knight d3. d3, really interesting. Oh, and going after the pawns. Now he can't stop these pawns. I mean, well, actually he can. The pawns are effectively stopped for the moment. But now he's got the white has the knight and the king going after these four pawns, and he's going to be able to eliminate the threat of this pawn and eliminate these two pawns defending this pawn, and this pawn is going to promote as long as the king is holding on back here. Now why does this work so well? Why is the king able to stop two pawns? Well, he can just go back and forth. I mean, if there were no other pieces on the board, then the king can just go back and forth and stop these two pawns. At no time can either pawn advance. If he moves one forward, then he loses the support of the other. Now, what's interesting is that, say he does something like this, and he pushes this pawn forward, and the king takes that. That's obviously taking the wrong one, right? Okay, let's go back another one. Maybe the king goes here, and then the king still takes this one. It still doesn't work because now this pawn is free. He's not going to be stopped. So this king is going to have to go back and forth between these two squares in order to keep these pawns stopped. And now that's assuming that white plays the right move and just pushes this pawn to a5. Unfortunately, white didn't play that move. White moved the knight to here, allowing black to come to this square with the king, which forks the king, the rook, and forks the knight and the pawn. So this is a bad situation for white. Now he's lost his either promoting pawn or the knight, one or the other. He can't defend them both. He defends the wrong one. He should defend the knight at this point by moving the knight away to c5, say. That would be reasonable. Instead, he defends the pawn, thinking that, yeah, the pawn is potentially becoming a queen. So Collin takes the knight. Now we've got this situation, this arrangement of pieces that we talked about, where neither player can make any progress here. Black can't take the pawn. White can't push the pawn. Excuse me. So we have b7. Oh, he can't push the pawn, but he does anyway. So this is a mistake. Okay, when you're in this situation, you're going to have to figure out another way to, well, at this point, the game is already drawn. Your chance of winning has sort of evaporated. You could still draw this game by cleaning up black's pawns with your king, or at least stopping the ones from advancing. But instead, you push this pawn, which is a losing move. King takes b7, and now this pawn is history. You can't defend it anymore. King f2, good. You're going to go in front of these pawns and stop them. h4, king g2, h3 check. This is interesting. Now we've got the same situation. This king and these pawns can't make any progress against one another. So all that's left in the game right now is the situation. Of course, black is totally winning at this point because he has the 2 pawns to 1. Actually, he has 4 pawns to 1. Once he eats up this pawn and then brings the king back over, then this is a winning position for black. All right, so what do we have? We have king a3. Whoops. King a6, I misread the notation. He's going to eat the pawn. King h2. White's doing the right thing, going back and forth between these two. King takes a5. King g3. Not really much he can do. It's a losing position for black. f6. King h2. King b4. King g3. h2, and Collin now makes the same mistake, trying to make a break for it. Doesn't work. King takes h2. King c4. All right. I'm not sure why these pieces are highlighted. King g3, coming after the pawn. King d4. King takes g4. All right. King takes e4. So now the pawn is history. I wonder if there was a better move back here. No, not really. All right. And then king g3. Retreating in face of the pawns. f5. King f2. King d3. It's okay. It's not the most efficient way of getting the pawns promoted, but it's going to work. King f3. Really not much white can do to stop these pawns. e4 check. King f2. Retreating. Can't really go anywhere else. All of these squares are controlled. You might have gone up there, but that doesn't. Then this pawn simply queens. F4, phalanx of pawns coming at him. Maybe more effective would have been E3. Then you can't stop that pawn, right? Where are you going to go? Here. Now you have to make a move. You have to go out, and black wins. So that's kind of efficient. But instead, black plays F4, which is fine. It'll get there. King F1, E3. Pawns continue marching down. King E1, F3. There's nowhere to go anymore. King F1, E2 check. White decides to go here. It's all the same. F2 check. King takes. King moves there, and white resigns because the pawn is about to promote. So that's interesting. Let's take a look, going back to where we started with this knight on. Let's see here. Knight on. There we go. Knight on C2. So we had 3 opportunities to see a pair of pawns in action. This was a mistake. That was a mistake as well, taking back. Instead, he should have just blockaded with this pawn and brought the king around. He should have done this move, creating this situation where the king blocks these 2 pawns and pawn blocks those 2 pawns. White's still winning, but what are you going to do? Let's go back, and then we have pushing the pawn forward. This is okay, and this is a bad move because it allows the pieces to be forked. All right, and I think I'm going to stop right there. Go play some chess.